I'm not a fan of running, and I don't know why I thought this challenge. The furthest I ever ran was 5k, and that was at some point last year. This year, I ran a total of 5 times. The last time being 3 months ago. It was incline intervals on the treadmill. Nothing long distance. So you could tell I was well prepared for this half marathon. A half marathon is 13.1 miles or 21 kilometers. Beginners aim to break the 3 hour mark, whilst intermediate runners aim to break the 2 hour mark. And that's about all the research I gathered. I didn't really see it as a big deal. I knew I didn't like running, but I was like, surely if I put my mind to it, it can't be that hard. All you're doing is putting one foot in front of the other, slightly faster than you usually do. So as long as I paced myself, I knew, or I hoped I'd be alright. A friend of mine had actually prepared for and ran a half marathon before, an official one. So I gave him a quick call, and his estimated time for me showed his lack of confidence. I asked about his experience. How many weeks did you train for it?
3 months proper training.
Yeah. And how long did it take you to do the half marathon?
Half marathon, I'd tell you the exact time if I was at home because I still have the badge printed, but it's about 3 hours.
Yeah. Then he gave some general advice.
Make sure if you've not run that much, make sure you've got something on you that's going to give you a bit of glucose.
Yeah.
Even like gummies or whatever. You can get like running gummies, but I think just standard like gummy sweets that help.
Yeah.
The thing is, you're not doing an event because events they have water stations. But I'd say you'll need water. 100% you need water, and make sure you've got some good running shoes.
All of which I chose to ignore. And then, fully aware of my inexperience and general dislike of long distance running, he gave me his estimated time of completion for my half marathon.
I think you'll easily do it, but since you've not trained for one, 5 hours.
5 hours. That just sounded silly to me. So I set my goal at the 3 hour mark. Low key though, maybe because of delusion, I was hoping to complete the half marathon within 2 hours. I lied. I did do some preparation. On my leg day 2 days before, I decreased my weight just slightly, but I couldn't help myself. I still went to failure. So if anything, that's made it worse. But yeah, other than that, there was no preparation. I planned to start the run at 1 p.m. So I woke up that day and I skipped my morning walk and had my usual 100 grams of oats before getting some work done. Then before I set off, I grabbed a pair of headphones, some running shoes that my brother did the gardening in a couple days ago, and I grabbed my old smartwatch to track my pace. I went to the shop to pick up a couple of snacks and then I set off. I live in the northwest of England, not far from Blackpool, and I know along the coastline of Lytham and Blackpool it's fairly flat. So I chose that to be my route for the half marathon. I'd start at Fairhaven, then run to North Pier in Blackpool, and then run back to Fairhaven. And that roughly totaled to 13.1 miles, aka a half marathon. Then I asked ChatGPT, right before I set off, what pace is required to complete the run within 3 hours. It said either 13 minutes and 44 seconds per mile or 8 minutes and 31 seconds per kilometre. Then with that in mind, I did some stretching, because that's what I've seen runners do, and set my smartwatch to 13.1 miles and set off. I hate to admit it, but instantly, within the first 2 minutes, I thought this was a mistake. I just had doubts flowing through my head. I started breathing faster, my chest felt a bit heavy, and I was wondering if it was even worth it. Like, it wasn't even an official marathon or half marathon. I was just doing it for the fun of it, just to prove a point and just for a YouTube video. I finished that first mile, and at the end of each mile, my watch let me know what pace I ran at. So I was running at a pace of 9 minutes and 30 seconds. But I didn't know if that was in kilometers or miles, so I just had to assume the worst. In my head, I was like, I'm not completing this half marathon within 3 hours. After that first mile, I got back to being me. I said I'd complete a half marathon that day, so that's what I was going to do. And if it took me longer than 3 hours, then it is what it is. At the end of every mile, my watch kept telling me my pace, 9 minutes and 30 seconds. I thought about running faster, but there'd be no point. It just wouldn't have been feasible. I wouldn't have been able to maintain it throughout the whole duration of the half marathon. Then at the 3 mile mark, both of my knees started to hurt. Like just the pain. It's not like gym pain, like muscle soreness. It's more like joint pain. But I'd already got into that mindset that I get into, so I wasn't going to slow down then anyway. But that was speaking too soon. At this point, I was in Blackpool. I carried on maintaining a pace of 9 minutes and 30 seconds, and I felt good. Like, I wasn't out of breath, I had no cramps, I didn't have a stitch. Yeah, my knees hurt a little bit, but it is what it is. And I felt like I could just carry on going. Then whilst I was taking in the sights, I did some mental maths. And since I'd ran 5 miles at this point, I must have been running for over 1.5 hours, according to my 9 minute 30 second pace. But it didn't feel like it. And when I checked the time on the watch was inaccurate. When I checked the time on my phone, it'd only been 50 minutes. So I was running 9 minutes and 30 seconds per mile, not per kilometre. And to complete the half marathon within 3 hours, I'd have to run at a pace of 13 minutes and 44 seconds. So I was way ahead of time. And that's when I realised if I pushed a little harder, I actually could complete the half marathon within 2 hours. The day before, I told my brother I was running a half marathon, and in that conversation he said, "What if you get halfway and you need a shit?" It's a good point, but I just laughed. Unfortunately, it turned out to be true. Despite not wanting to, I had to slow down to a walk, and I checked maps for the nearest public toilet, and it was an 18-minute walk. I was like, I can't run, and I'm not going to walk 18 minutes and ruin my chance of completing this half marathon within 2 hours. So I ducked into a cafe. And annoyed at wasting time, I carried on my run to the North Pier. But runner's trot wasn't done with me yet. So I got to the North Pier, turned back on myself, and I had to dip into a hotel. On that little break, I did some halfway reflecting, and I was wondering why was everyone staring at me whilst I was running. I was looking back at some of the videos that I recorded whilst I was running, and I realised why. My chest was just moving mad. After that second break, I'd cooled down completely. I've cooled down completely. My legs are starting to feel sore. And when I started running again, it just felt uncomfortable. In other words, I lost all my momentum. But me being me, I still thought I could complete the remaining 6 miles within 50 minutes. 50 minutes, that's the goal. I picked up the pace. I ran the next mile in under 9 minutes, my fastest mile yet, but I couldn't maintain it. My legs were just too sore. I didn't want to risk injury, and I wanted to train arms and shoulders still the next day. To my own disappointment, the rest of the run was a mix of walking and running. On one of my little bouts of walking, I checked how far I had left on Google Maps, and I realised I could walk the remaining distance and still complete the half marathon within 3 hours. Just checked, and technically I could walk the rest of this. But walking the rest of the way just seemed boring, like where's the challenge in that? So I carried on running whenever I could. I barely have a drink. I completed the last mile by walking half of it and then sprinting the rest of the way. Well, I thought I was sprinting. You can tell I wasn't going fast because this guy overtook me. So in the end, I finished this unofficial half marathon in 2 hours and 47 minutes. But On my smartwatch, it told me my active time, and that was 2 hours and 31 minutes. Either way, I broke past the 3 hour mark, beating my mate's record and his estimation of 5 hours. I still couldn't help but think I could do better though. Like, imagine I didn't have to take those 2 breaks. Imagine if I didn't cool down. Imagine if I just carried on going. Then maybe, on a good day, I could complete a half marathon without any training in 2 hours. But that's the point. Like, this was a challenge that I didn't prepare for, and I still managed to break the beginner time of 3 hours. I'm sure some runners will say I didn't do it properly or I did something wrong, but in my head, even though it's unofficial, I still ran a half marathon within 3 hours, so I'm taking it. This might sound like the typical advice you hear any motivational speaker saying, but you really can do anything you put your mind to. Like, I've never done any long distance running, apart from the 5K or the cross country I did back in high school. I don't run at all on a day-to-day basis. This year I've run 5 times. The last time being 3 months ago. All I do is walk. I don't even do compound lifts right now. Like, I just do isolation exercises. So technically, I should be a physically dysfunctional bodybuilder who's stiff with no stamina. Yet somehow, I managed to run a half marathon within 3 hours. But that's what I mean, like, you do shit like this, and the more shit you do like this, the more you believe you can do shit like this. So you just carry on doing shit like this. Like, you just believe you can do it. And sometimes that belief can carry you further than any preparation you can do. Like, we all fall into a trap of pre-planning, over-planning, overthinking, preparing. And if you get carried away, that can take up more time than doing the actual thing does. But yeah. What do you want to see me do next?